Yeah. Okay, so we are going to call today's subcommittee to order. We are here today to hear the second level appeal of Vino Farms LLC, pursuant to ETP regulations 22 CCR, section 4450B 2A3, and this matter concerns the panel's decision to deny the appealant's training application under the ETP's agricultural initiative, which took place at the April 2024 panel meeting. Can we just take roll of subcommittees so we have it on record of who's here?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending the February 2nd level appeal meeting. Before we begin, there are a few housekeeping announcements. If you are here in the Sequoia room in order to avoid a persistent disruption of the proceedings, please do not stream via mobile device or connected to the platform, as it will interfere with our recording and sound system. If you are attending the meeting in person, presenting or providing comment, please speak clearly into the microphone. Also, avoid speaking over each other, as this can cause interference with our audience. For those who are viewing or attending the meeting virtually and would like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand feature and wait for your name to be called, at which time you will be unmuted. Please speak clearly, state your name, title, and the company you're representing. You may be given 3 minutes to speak. Lastly, to ensure a respectful and professional environment, please keep side conversations to a minimum while inside the Sequoia room. If you need to have a discussion, kindly step outside to avoid disrupting the meeting. We will now proceed with roll call. Rebecca Bettencourt, present. Michael Hill, present. Jennifer Fothergill, present. Chair Bettencourt, there are 3 members present. There is a quorum. Also present, Jessica Grimes, Executive Director, Kamani Armstrong, Assistant Director, Chief Counsel, Michael Cable, Legal Counsel.
Thank you. So I'm just going to take us through how we're going to proceed today with this hearing. We're going to conduct it pursuant to the governing procedures of Administrative Adjudication Bill of Rights outlined in Government Code section 11425.10. ETP staff will first present the matter on the appeal, and then the appealant will then be given the opportunity to present and rebut evidence. Anyone have any questions on that process?
No.
No. All right. So I am going to turn the meeting over to Staff Attorney Michael Cable to introduce the agenda item. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And this is kind of a new hearing for us. I think I've been at ETP for 7+ years, and we haven't had one like this yet, so it's a little bit different. I think perhaps before I kind of get into it, just to start to lay the record a little bit, talk about exhibits or records to make sure that we're all on the same page, we don't have the same documents. And when I was looking at that, I saw that I have my October 16th, 2024 memorandum that was part of this notice hearing, and it includes the following exhibits, which I was trying to use that as we were kind of referring to exhibits as we were going along. I know you have similar exhibits, but I was just kind of using this number sequence that we had. Which had as A, ETP statement of decision, which is dated on May 14th, 2024. B was Vino Farms first level appeal, which is dated June 10th, 2024. Exhibit C is ETP's first level executive director determination, which is dated August 19, 2024. Exhibit D is Vino Farms second level appeal, which is dated August 29th, 2024. And then additionally, I was just tracking exhibit E, which is my October 16, 2024 memorandum without the exhibits, but at least the narrative text. And then exhibit F was Vino Farms brief, which is dated February 6, 2025, listing that as exhibit F, which I think everybody's received a copy of all of those documents. I know that other things may come up. Like we do have meeting minutes, and there is a recording that's out there that concerns the April panel meeting as well as the December panel meeting. So I acknowledge that those are out there as well. But that to me was kind of what I was looking at in terms of records. Procedural overview, just the procedural overview review, just so everybody's on the same page of where we're at, how we got here today. April 26, 2024 was Vino Farms came to panel for an application, and it was under the Ag Initiative. It wasn't under our typical type of Fort funding or general bread and butter type projects, but this one was specifically under the Ag Initiative. Vino's application was denied. There were 4 denials and 2 abstentions. It was the motion to deny. I believe the motion was made by Gretchen Newsom, and the second was by Madison Hall. On May 14th, pursuant to our code and regulations, we issued a statement of decision which was a denial and articulated the denial of Vino Farms agricultural application. And I focus on that because that is part of this case. June 10, 2024, Vino Farms kindly submitted a first level appeal, appealing the denial of its application by the panel at that April panel meeting. August 19, 2024, ETP issued a first level executive directed determination that sustained that panel's denial of Vino Farms application and denying Vino Farms first level appeal. On August 29, 2024, Vino Farms submitted a second level appeal arguing that the executive determination was wrong, that the panel should have granted Vino Farms Ag Initiative application at the April panel meeting. There were some delays. I think people know that there were some delays. There were some outside entities that were targeting our meetings towards the end of last year. So we did have some delays. But we did bring it to the December 2024 panel meeting, and the panel moved to delegate its authority to this subcommittee that we have here today to hear this matter. And doing it, as you mentioned, and consistent with and in accordance with our regulations 4450B2. So this is where we're at today. I'm just going to do kind of an opening, and I leave it open for some discussion because I know probably there's a lot of people that want to jump to the heart of the matter. But let me just kind of at least lay a few things to begin with. Because I know there's going to be a robust discussion perhaps on some issues, but at least a quick introduction, because it seems to me after reviewing all of these things and looking through the record and going back and listening to the recordings, Vino Farms' argument, in my opinion, seems very much weighted on previous applications. So you'll see, like spread throughout the brief, there's a lot of strength and weight given to, well, the previous applications were approved, so why not this one? And that's why I go back often to the Ag Initiative, because there are very specific components of that. In doing that, it just seems to be very much kind of missing the point that this was an Ag Initiative application, that it had additional elements that concerned worker voice, safety conditions, worker conditions, those sorts of things. It was clearly laid out in the flyers that went out regarding the Ag Initiative. We also had some meetings in January of 2024 before we even put these things out. There were informational sessions and meetings where all of this was explained. And basically at the end of the day, the panel just didn't think that this one rose to the level of the Ag Initiative. There was certain issues that came up. I know that Vino Farms likes to focus a lot on those issues coming from a publication or a source. But I think even that kind of misses the point, because really the inquiry that was being made wasn't necessarily to these specifics, but more so to the part of the matter, which concerned worker voice and worker participation and worker safety. There was issues concerning cleaning up and other issues that are there. Whereas technically there may not be a legal violation, but there are still issues that the panel members have in concerns regarding worker safety. We're going to go through it, and I'm sure Vino Farms is going to cherry pick, cherry pick items out of the record that seem to focus more on some of those publications and news articles. But also too, I think when you listen to it, a lot of it has to do with Vino Farms' perception of those facts and what they thought they should be. But I will leave that for I can go on, but I think what I'll do is kind of lay it up here to kind of give Vino Farms a chance to be part of this discussion. I guess kind of in conclusion of this introduction is that, to me, the panel reviewed all the issues that were present. There was questions and very specific to the working conditions, safety conditions, and things that were very specific to the Ag Initiative. And given the vote, it just didn't rise to the level of accepting this application. I would yield and let Vino Farms.
Thank you. Just before we take testimony though, we just request that each speaker state their first and last name. And how many speakers are we expecting to intend to present at today's hearing, just so we know?
Potentially 3.
Okay, fantastic. That's all we need. So yes, we'll open the floor to hand over to yourselves.
Great. So just as a matter of record keeping, I just want to make sure that for the record that our brief is being accepted, and the one that we had submitted in advance of this on February 6th, 2024, that's admitted.
Correct, and I have that down as F.
Okay, great. As well as all the exhibits that we had attached as well.
They also, those exhibits are the exact exhibits that I already have, so they're somewhat duplicative because you had A, B, and C. Your A, B, and C are actually part of my same A, B, C.
Yeah, the reason I asked though is we had specifically submitted our A, B, and C because the ETP panels packet had some pages out of order. And so we just wanted to make sure that the record was complete with our A, B, and C as well.
What we'll do is just, I'm kind of lawyerly, sorry about that, but there is another item, there was the brief, and then in addition to the brief was a separate document that had attached to it exhibits. I'll just identify that in B, that way they're all listed and we can have them included in the record.
Perfect, thank you. My name is Michael Kopp. I'm with Seyfarth Shaw. I represent Vino Farms in this matter. And with me here today is Veronica Ventura, who's the longstanding HR director of Vino Farms, and then Keith Brahma, who you may be familiar with, who's a consultant who's worked with Vino Farms and interacted and engaged with ETP on this application. So first of all, I do want to express from the outset our appreciation of the opportunity to appear here before you and to dialogue with you on this matter. We certainly appreciate the panel's action in December to grant a hearing. We know there were various administrative options open to the panel. And so we do appreciate the opportunity to come here to you today and have a dialogue outside of the papers on which you had the opportunity to see and review. We also appreciate just in terms of the engagement interactive process with the agency, the discussions with Mike Cable and Kimani Armstrong in advance of this hearing, so we hope to continue this. I'll be brief here because we've set our position both in all of our appeal level papers, and then we also had presented presentations, both myself and Veronica Ventura at the December panel meeting. But there were a couple of things that I wanted to highlight just to kick off the discussions. Number one is, sometimes these processes can be facelift, but Vino Farms really is exactly and truly the type of locally grown California business with deep roots and history with the state and the agricultural community in particular. As Ronnie Natura identified at the last panel discussion, Vino Farms was started decades ago as a local California family business, remains family owned and operated. This isn't Monsanto. It's not some multinational ag business, but it's California grown. It's been a part of the agricultural scene, and they're not a passive participant. I mean, they really do care deeply about the wine growing region and agricultural community, and they've really been vanguards and leaders on that front, including in developing programs that I think the state of California can be proud of. And Mike Cable made mention of some questions, including regarding pesticide. I mean, one of the things that we submitted in our briefing was a hyperlink to one of the articles that just identifies all of the initiatives that Vino Farms has undertaken, not just in terms of being stewards of its business, but also stewards of the land. And I have copies of that here. Can I introduce those into the record?
I think that'd be short.
Okay.
In fact, we could just do it next in order, which I think is H.
And I'm happy to distribute these to the panel members as well, if that's okay.
That's fine. In fact, you can just want to do all.
Oh, okay, perfect. Awesome.
Maybe for the record, just state exhibit H and what it is, the document.
Sure, so I've just marked exhibit H, which is an article identifying Vino Farms, organic, biodynamic, sustainability, farming programs and initiatives. And as that indicates, Vino Farms been deeply involved in creating the Lodi Rules sustainability program that's included transitioning hundreds and hundreds of acres to certified organic or biodynamic farming. Thousands of acres are already third-party certified as sustainable farming. They're using innovative measures such as lacewing larvae for pest control. I think you'll see a picture in there of drones dropping lacewing on larvae. The certifications are as diverse as Cercis, the bee BEE better certified for its pollinator conservation efforts, restoration of native plant and animal habitats. So they've been a long-standing presence in California. They care about their business, they care about their land, and they care about their workers. As we presented in the panel presentation, this isn't an employer that skimps when it comes to how it treats its employees. It pays very generous wages. It provides a health plan to employees with an employee contribution at any level of $1 a month with no deductible. I mean, frankly, that's better than the health plan I have, and that I see with a lot of Fortune 500 or 100 companies. They provide dental, vision, long-term disability, accidental death, dismemberment policies, all paid by Vino Farms, all in excess of what's required by the law. Paid vacation, paid holidays, sick pay, 401k with a company match of 20%, which, by the way, isn't just a shell program, like something that's offered with no realistic expectation of participation. It has a very high take rate. Employees participate in that program. And again, these are all things that Vino Farms does because it cares about its workforce. It wants to build a long-standing workforce. It wants to invest in its workforce. And it doesn't just talk the talk, it walks the walk in terms of that employee treatment. The points that I want to address, I appreciate Mike Cable's remarks. I mean, we'll just have to respectfully agree to disagree. I think the transcript speaks for itself. And I'm not here to indict or criticize. It's to have a dialogue. And I wanted to provide a little bit more context because, I mean, frankly, the transcript just speaks for itself. I mean, you can see the video as part of public record. There were a fair amount of questions regarding the PAGA lawsuit. And I just want to provide some additional context. We have a little bit more freedom and flexibility here. This isn't, the prior panel meeting. So, I mean, the first point is that, a PAGA lawsuit is not an indication of a worker voice issue. It really isn't. The PAGA lawsuits, I mean, they're an unfortunate part of the business landscape in California. While, the goals were laudable in terms of its introduction, even the state of California recognized the shortcomings. So, a lot of times these lawsuits were used not to address any actual violation. In fact, that was the problem with the statute, was that it permitted folks to bring suit without even, that employee didn't even have to have a violation. And that was part of the recent reforms. This was not brought by a current employee, so it's not a worker voice issue. It was brought by a former disgruntled employee. There was no finding of any violation. That complaint had to be presented to the California Labor Workforce Development Agency. They have a 65-day period to review. If they see an issue, they can investigate and prosecute. The California LWJ had no interest in it. At that point, it just goes to the plaintiff's attorneys. Secondly, Vino Farms, like a lot of small family businesses, don't have the resources to invest in a litigation fight on statewide claims. And under the prior statute, you have in terrorem settlements. I mean, the way you could stack PAGA penalties. This was a make or break, business case in terms of the exposure, because that's just the way the statute was written. And so a lot of folks, Vino Farms doesn't stand alone in terms of entering into that. And by the way, like I said, you don't have to take my word for it. The California legislature, vindicated the position during the course of our appeal process that there was a lot of abuse of this system. The other thing that I wanted to point out, because I find it just very stark, is that the plaintiff's own papers, this is just how little an indication of a worker's voice issue there was connected with any of this. The plaintiff's filing, not Vino Farms, said, in terms of the settlement, that there was a risk that plaintiff would be unable to establish liability for unpaid straight time or overtime wages. This is probably less interesting and more dry, but just from a black letter standpoint, settlements just by law are not evidence of violation. But the bottom line is that this family farm did and wine growing management enterprise did what a lot of small California businesses do. It settled the case as a business decision. And frankly, it's not unusual. A lot of the applicants that have come before this panel and had their applications granted, no questions asked, have just like Vino Farms been the subject of PAGA lawsuits and reached settlements. The other thing that I wanted to address, again, in terms of the workers' voice issue is, and I'm addressing just because of the volume of questions from the prior ETP panel, which was, there were a lot of questions about an outside, not an inside organization, picketing and then the associated media. And, you know, again, the issue there is that that's not an evidence of a worker voice issue. That organization is not comprised of Vino Farms. It doesn't understand Vino's operations, and it's had visibility events all across Northern California indiscriminately, you know, without understanding what the actual pay practices, what the business is all about. And frankly, it was a blip. You know, you don't see them parked outside of, you know, Vino Farms. And I think the fact that Vino Farms employees were not participating actually is evidence of the inverse, that there isn't a worker voice issue or concern. Then, you know, I want to address just some of Mr. Cable's comments in terms of the fact finding and the evidence. I mean, and again, that's why we're here to dialogue. We're here to address any concerns. I don't want to belabor the point because it's all set out in our papers. But frankly, we just disagree. We think that there was an understandable but a mistaken you know, focus on these events that, you know, we're here to provide more context on and to you know, address any concerns. But really, the appeals have been just line item directed to the statement of decisions that have issued. So, I mean, I appreciate the point being raised on the worker voice, but it's nowhere to be found in the in any of the statements of decision or any of the appeals. Frankly, we think that you know, in terms of the articulated and the regulatory standards that the panel itself provided as the guideposts for granting or denying the application. Every one of those bullet points we've addressed in our papers. I'm sure the panel's had the opportunity to consider those, so I don't want to take up further time on that. With that, I'll just sum up to say that, I mean, look, Vino Farms doesn't take anything for granted. The point that we've really enjoyed and had great success in participating in this program isn't a been there, done that, so give it to us again. It's a reference point. It's just saying, you know, Vino Farms has really appreciated this program. Its workers and its trainees have benefited from it. And frankly, they just regarded this as an anomaly that we're hopeful to work through today, and we certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Thank you. Any other comments? Before I pass it back.
Well, I was actually clearing my throat.
I'm just checking, pass it back to you.
I didn't know how
See
you
if
were
there's any
gonna do it, but-
rebuttal, but I just wanted to check if there was anything else we said before we pass it back.
Rebecca, I would say that the appellant should proceed and continue their presentation, and then if there's any rebuttal from ETP, we can do
If
that.
there's anything else from the presentation perspective.
If our briefing is being accepted into the record, then our arguments are preserved. I don't think there's any, unless the panel has questions for me.
We'll come around to that in a minute.
Yeah, then I'm happy to conclude and submit on both the written statements here as well as the record before the committee.
We'll pass it back if there's any rebuttal from you, Mr. Cable.
Not necessarily rebuttal, because remember, I think we're here more in a cooperative type of environment. But I did want to point out a few things that I want to make sure, because we do have some unique panel members present. That was in April as well. I hear what we're saying about PAGA and picketing and those sorts of things. And I can understand, because I did 20 years of litigation before coming to ETP, as to PAGA and the history behind PAGA and all those issues with it. And I would love to jump in and argue about those issues too. But I don't think that was really the heart of the question. The heart of the question was the underlying, how about the safety and worker conditions? What about these stories? What about these? And I don't know whether or not the responses rose to that level for some of our panel members. There were other issues that did come up too. I remember Member Hill asking questions about leadership, indicating that these issues, because I think one issue that was really kind of troublesome, and I think Madison Holt drew it out in some of the questioning was, this seems a bit neurotic, a little bit talking on both sides. We did not be wrong, we have no violations, but here's all the corrective measures we did for things that weren't violations to begin with. And I think that kind of disconnect left the panel lacking as to like what was going on. But there were other questions too, as to like, I think there was discussions regarding recent retirements and leadership and turnovers, and then they just kind of got lacking as to like whether or not those things have been resolved and whether or not these issues would continue. And these are things that were brought up by Vino Farms. The line of questioning didn't raise PAGA. Vino Farms rose PAGA. If you go back to the record, there was nothing about PAGA. It talked about there are these lawsuits and things, and my concerns are this. And then the discussion regarding PAGA and all these distractions came about. There was also questions too that came up, we got with Rebecca, Davenport, about action plans with leaders and awareness, because we had questions regarding performance. My recollection is this proposal came in a little shy of that 75%, so there was also some issues regarding performance. So I didn't want to leave and hand it back over to you without raising some of these other issues, which I don't think were addressed in that presentation regarding performance, leadership, some of the things that kind of just like lack of pun died on the vine.
Got an opportunity for further remarks. Okay, well, I mean, the record speaks for itself. I mean, the panel was on video. I'm looking at the transcript right here. I'm afraid the PAGA issue did get raised by the panel. I'm going to referring to the panel question. I do get a little uncomfortable. It was shared with me in 2021. There was a class action lawsuit. And the very next question, if you could elaborate, if you're saying that the issues were fixed and you're saying there wasn't anything done, but there was a settlement of 1.4 million. And it continues. I mean, again, I mean, the record is the record. And I do believe, I mean, just out of fairness and completeness for the record, Ms. Natura's responses were addressing this issue. I mean, it really, I guess the argument is really non-responsive to the point that look, a PAGA lawsuit in itself and a settlement is just a legally, statutorily impermissible consideration. It was raised, it was addressed. Ms. Natura talked at length about the training program process that Vino Farms implemented, the following the guidelines, the fact that you know, with regard to pesticide application, I mean, the state of California itself has come in. I mean, the safety organization responsible for certifying and protecting California workers has come in and certified their processes as compliant. So, I mean, we can continue the discussion along these lines. I'm just making this presentation for the record and protect our position, but I'm also happy to transition the dialogue to a more collaborative question and answer session to address any concerns of the panel members.
That's exactly what I was leading.
Alrighty, I like that. I like your instinct. So we're now just going to open the floor up for discussion among the subcommittee for questions to Vino Farms. So I'm going to open the floor to if anyone has questions.
You'd like to start?
Cool. Thank you. Like this.
My questions are just for understanding. So it's a family-owned business. It's not a publicly traded company, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and therefore it doesn't have a board of directors.
No, not in that sense.
And who is the person in charge of farms?
It's family owned and operated, so we currently have the third generation or 5 cousins that manage and operate the company at this time.
So there isn't one person, it's a 5-cousin committee or something that runs the business?
It's a collaborative effort, yes.
Okay. And in terms of one of the conversations was about employee voice. Do you solicit employee voice on a regular basis?
We do.
How do you do that?
We have a HR relations coordinator that goes out to all the fields that Vino Farms operates on and speaks directly with the employees. Ask them questions, how they're doing.
And how
if
is
they have
that,
any questions.
how is that information then collated and analyzed and become actionable?
It's a report that's given to ownership and myself on a weekly basis. And any concerns that come out of there, we address.
Um,
Can I just a little bit further on that? So just so I understand, so you have that coordinator that goes out weekly to the sites?
Yes.
Okay. And it's just one individual or is it a team?
It is one individual, however, a few of us in the HR department, will go out at times as well with them. But this individual does normally go out to most of the locations, on a regular basis. I mean, this is the person who is able to travel and, touch base with, the different levels of employees that we have. Yeah.
I think what I'm hearing from my two committee members is it's around focusing on where there is workers' voice, how do you encourage that workers' voice? If they do not want to feel comfortable, because I think of some employees are like, it's HR, I don't want to go and talk to HR. Is there any other way for them to encourage the worker voice? Are there employee engagement surveys? Are there hotlines? Or is it really just in that? I think we're trying to just understand the workers' voice ability because the Ag Initiative shows this. Are there other ways that they can, or is it very much focused on that one way?
Yeah, there are different avenues. So, I do want you to keep in mind, we are a small business, family owned and operated, company. Aside from that position, they know they can contact we basically have an open door policy. They can contact anyone in the HR and safety department, as well as their supervisors, as well as go directly to an owner. I have witnessed an employee talk to an owner one-on-one firsthand, about a question they had. So very much an open door policy. We do have, suggestion boxes throughout the properties where they can fill out a concern or even a suggestion, complaint, whatever, and they can do so anonymously, or they can do so and fill out their information. They have my cell phone number as well as our HR department cell phone number, and we take calls pretty much 24/7. Anytime they have a question, whether it's related to benefit question or a problem they're having. Sometimes it's a resource for something in their home life, whatever that looks like, we're there to assist them with that. Yeah, and to be honest, I feel like our HR department has built a really great relationship and rapport with our employees where they do trust us. And, there are times where they come to us with personal problems that we guide them to the appropriate resources.
If I could just add to Veronica's statement, just in terms of the multiple channels for raising issues. I mean, Vino Farms really is dedicated to wage and hour compliance, and frankly, you can see that because they don't just want to meet the law, they want to exceed what their obligations are. But to your point in your question, like what other opportunities are, they've built like multiple fail safes into their systems that essentially force worker input if there's an issue. So for example, as part of their timekeeping processes, there's a process by which if there's any issue, they can raise that as just part of the timekeeping process. Like, hey, I didn't get my meal period today. I didn't get my rest period, and that's something that's addressed and it's a remedy and it's investigated. It's part of the in-general systems. Whether they want to provide that info or not, it's something that they have checks and balances to make sure they're compliant. They're very wholeheartedly dedicated to wage and hour compliance and supervisor training. That any issues that employees are raising with respect to meal periods, wages, time on or off the clock, that is something that can be reported through those channels. In other words, timekeeping, which is really quite easy, non-adversarial, or with supervisors or with HR. But this is a company that wants to do right, and they want to hear from their workers. They've made sure they've implemented systems across the board to facilitate that.
Really quick, I had one more thing to add. you mentioned surveys, we do have a third party who has come out periodically to do surveys of our employees. They basically meet with him one-on-one. There's no HR or manager, supervisor, or owner presence. It is a person who had started out doing safety trainings for us in the past. And he now focuses solely on employee relations. And so he goes out and he's a person that they trust and speak very openly to. So we have him go around every so often periodically and meet with them and gather any concerns, you know, kind of let us know, how are we doing? You know, how's each department doing and what their feedback is, and that's all done anonymously so that we get the results only.
That's fantastic to hear, by the way, having a third party, because you realize that any management team can say something, but unless the employees trust you, they're not going to bring it up.
Agreed.
So in that particular case, that's very helpful.
Any other questions?
I do have a question. So as Michael mentioned, this is a very specific, proposal for the agricultural initiative. And it's a very finite amount of money that was allocated for proposals for this program. And so there are very specific elements, that basically needed to be checked off, to qualify, for lack of a better word, for funding. And then part of the process is, and I'm just saying this out loud to get me to my question, but you know, you submit your application, you go through that process, and then it comes to panel. And that's where panel has the opportunity to do their due diligence and make sure that this funding of this finite amount are going to contractors for all the right reasons. And so I just want to make sure that that's out there, because there was a lot of emphasis in the exhibits and the paperwork on past proposals, and there was much success with those, and it's awesome, you know, for the contractor and for the employees to see that. But this was a very specific proposal. So that's why there are so many questions about the worker voice and such. So with that, I would like to ask you about one of the elements that is important is the opportunity for advancement within the company. And I know in your documents, you talk about there, you know, you encourage workers, if they want to advance their careers, to take classes at community colleges or additional trainings or things of that nature. So talk to me a little bit about how that is conveyed to the workers, and how do they know that there is possible for advancement within the company?
Sure. And before I get to answer that question, I do want to go on record and correct me if I'm wrong, one of you, but our submission of that contract was put into the Ag initiative by the ETP program. We had always been on the core funds, all of our previous contracts, and we were told, oh, it's the same thing, it's just being put in ag because you're an ag company. That's how it was presented to us. We were fine with going forward with the core program because that's what we'd always done. And we were actually under the understanding that we could not switch to an ag initiative because there was a deadline and we had not met that deadline. So I do want to make that clear. I don't know if you recall that, Keith, but that is something that I can probably pull up in an email format when we were given that information. Okay, so I do want to differentiate that.
Could I just ask, just for the record, just to make sure, are there any names of people that you can think of or witnesses that would be applicable to what you're describing?
This would have been with our ECP, is it, I don't know their title, it's the analyst, yes. Yes.
Development analyst. And then communications, were there emails, you mentioned emails, are there emails about this?
There may be, I have to look, I'm not sure.
Keith Brahma, consultant.
Yeah.
I know who you are.
Unfortunately. So I'll have to go back and look. I do remember an analyst reaching out to us, but I can't remember if it was via phone or email and saying, hey, would you mind if we moved that? And I asked, you know, I didn't look at the details of the flyers at the time. And I asked, well, what's the difference? And nothing, because they're an ag company, we want them in ag. But basic, same reimbursement, same requirements. And we kind of just left it at that and went along with development. And these issues, I'll take some blame there too. Or I didn't bring them to her, say, hey, do you have any lawsuits out there, wasn't kind of in the purview at the time, so. But I can definitely go to my emails and look up, but one of the analysts, because I think if you look at the timing, when we submitted it was under core, the ag may not even have existed at that time, so somebody had to come to us, I believe, to make that proposal.
Fair enough, and I didn't want to hijack the proceeding, I just wanted to make sure if there was a few elements we could put in the record, because and I think it's an important issue, right? So thank you.
I'll make a note to go look at that, but yeah. I'm not gonna put anybody's name out there right now.
You don't want your deposition today?
Okay, so getting back to your question, yes, so within our workforce, we will normally post any recruitment efforts we have for supervisors or tractor drivers or irrigators. So anyone who's interested that's already working for the company has the ability to apply, or if they want that opportunity, usually when we're hiring them, we let them know, look, there are other positions available. If you are interested, please let us know, let your supervisor know, so we can put you on the training track and give them that opportunity. So we have our viticulture department that we've had several people move from our field operations side into the vit department. We've had some people from our field operations move into the shop as well. As mechanic assistants is kind of how they start and go that route. I recall there's at least one employee who had been a tractor driver, actually got his Class A license and now is driving, on the Class A capabilities when we have that available. So there are definitely opportunities for employees. We also participate there's a leadership program specifically for ag out of Sonoma. I don't want to misquote their name. Pick up their that we've had several employees participate in before. It's called the Sonoma County Wine Growers. The group is called Voz de los Viñedos. And we've had 4 participants in the last 2 years in their leadership academy. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that group at all or not, but they actually, at the conclusion of their leadership program, they get an all expense paid trip to Washington, DC. And a very great tour of Washington, DC, the Capitol, with the assistance from Congressman Mike Thompson. And that is a very rewarding DC trip. I had the honor and ability to go last year with them, and they got an inside look as to how things work in the United States political system and just the history. And to see and hear their feedback was just amazing to me. I mean, it just gives me chills still, to be honest, that they were able to experience something like that. So many, not just our employees, but the other employees that were there from other growers that said, I never thought I would be here or have an opportunity to take a trip like this. So that's another great program that we do participate in with our employees as well. Yeah.
So I think going back to sole purpose of ETP, whether it's an ag initiative or core funding, one of the big pieces is around providing or fostering the creation of high wage, high skilled jobs. And the ag initiative clearly outlines workers' voice. It also talks about the training to upskill the farm workers. Within the proposal that was in front of us, can you give us great examples of what's been in the past? The proposal is from this month forward. It's approved. Can you give me some idea of how this proposal is going to meet some of those needs to upskill those farm workers? Some examples that you're seeing through that proposal going forward.
Sure. So we continue to onboard more technology for the use of our employees. Previously was ag code. Also, we've implemented IntelliCulture, and that's still being learned how to use. I think I mentioned at the last meeting where they scan QR codes, are able to complete pre-inspection checklists for equipment that they're using. We also have a new one coming on board, here called Fluid Secure. Kind of removes the paper trail for how much gas did we pump in this equipment kind of thing. It's all by tablet now, so that's just a new learning curve. You know, we've got to remember, we're dealing with ag employees, some of them that have never really touched a lot of the technology. I think we may know people in our lives that know how to use the phone basics of a smartphone, but not anything else. And so it's really getting them comfortable with using all of that and helping us to become more efficient and giving us more time to spend on some of the fun stuff we like to do with our employees. So that's a couple of the things that I can think of right now. A few other notes is we have changed our computer platform or kind of operating system we're now on. We've been on M365 for a while now and just kind of deploying out all of those systems to our field operations employees. They all now have, I mentioned before, I believe, smartphones. They all have iPhones. Our supervisor, our lowest level supervisors on that have tablets or laptops. So they're, taking care of timekeeping, looking at production, looking at, all the different programs that we're working with on a regular basis, learning about internet security, multi-factor authentication. Can't I keep just using a 11111 passcode? Nope, you can't. You have to change it to something unique, those types of things, that they're just not comfortable with and really having to learn the reasons why. And I will tell you, when we have a candidate come to our company looking for a job and they can tell us, I work or have worked with ag code, or I have worked with these systems, that just makes them all the more enticing because that's the direction that ag is going in, using this technology, and it definitely makes them, more attractive when they're looking for other jobs. And then obviously, they're great at mastering it and being able to move up, and promote in the company as well.
So upskilling these workers, is it allowing increases, opportunities for advancement and increases in wages as well as they go through the upskilling?
Yes.
Any other questions? Yeah.
I have a question and a comment. So it's all in the context of workers and their safety and health as well. So how do you manage safety? You have a dedicated person, what do they do?
Yes, we, so our HR and safety department, we've got 5 of us. And some of us focus on just the safety. We plan a safety training calendar throughout the year. We're currently working with our workers' comp safety advisor and another third party to put together some behavior-based training, kind of changing it up a little bit. And then we also send many of our supervisors, I would say all of our new supervisors, whether they were just recently hired or they were promoted in the last year, to AgSafe conference held in Monterey, usually in February. And they all go through the safety certification process. It's a certificate that they earn. It's 2 days of training that they receive on how to give trainings, how to engage people, just hearing, all the ins and outs of safety for them so that they're able to help and, assist the HR and safety department when training employees. Our onboarding process is a long day. We're looking at extending it over a couple of days so that we can go over all of our HR policies, all of our safety training. Aside from that, a new hire will go through that process first, and then they'll go into the field for their practical training. So if it's a tractor driver, they're going to demonstrate their tractor abilities. We have a checklist so that we can ensure that they know how to operate safely. Then if they're for example, an irrigator, they may operate an ATV. We go through that practical training as well. We hire a third party at least once a year, maybe more, who will also come in once a year and hit all of our locations with training specific to ag and their duties and what they're doing. Yeah.
Okay.
Does that answer the question?
Thank you.
Okay.
Did you have a question anymore about safety?
Not exactly. Yeah, carry on.
So this is just a comment. So when you said that there's 5 or 6 people that run the company,
Mhm.
there's research that talks about team dynamics. And what happens is teams will either make decisions very conservative or very aggressive because there's nobody accountable. There's no one person accountable. And so I hope this doesn't happen, but you can make wrong decisions in a team dynamic because there isn't accountability. So I don't know the background of how this team operates, if there's a person that runs it, runs the team and is, even the temporary head. But it concerns me about the future, especially a family-owned business where there's no other accountability but the team. So it can make decisions that are inappropriate. Now, you've claimed that there hasn't been any wrongdoing. But it does worry me about the future in that kind of a setup.
I mean, if I could just speak to that, in terms of, I've worked with Vino Farms for a number of years now, and in terms of, the team dynamic, in terms of, when I engage with them on issues that they're evaluating. And by the way, it really is like they are very much focused in terms of what you're describing, the team dynamic going the wrong way or aggressively. Their approach has been to be advancement oriented, and you can see that in the article, to be on the forefront in terms of how they're treating workers and their probation or compliance. And so the decision making, I mean, it is a family dynamic, and I think they hold each other accountable in terms of they're all having an equal and very invested stake in it. But when you're communicating with the company, you're not communicating with sort of a faceless head. You're communicating with the Ledbetter family. I mean, I think it's great to raise that concern, and that the research and the studies is something they can consider. But I can tell you that the way they've implemented their management dynamic, it's been one that's been progressive, technology oriented, and worker oriented.
I'd like to add a little something on there, just my own personal perspective. I'm not sure if anyone here has had the opportunity to work with a family in the past. That's for a company that is family owned and operated. It can be very interesting. I can tell you, I have the utmost respect, admiration for the Ledbetter family, the manner that they handle their business, the manner that they conduct their business, and just their outlook and, kind of their mission, part of what they're doing. I mean, this is the third generation. They are trying to keep it established and going forward in a time where not very many families can do that or want to do that anymore. So I have honestly the utmost respect for them and admiration. I know I could not be in business with my cousins. I will say that for the record, and I hope they never see this video.
For the record.
Yeah, and I hope that someday you get to meet them and get to know them, because they truly, they do hold each other accountable. Yeah, I actually have the utmost
Hopefully
respect and
they're great
admiration.
and they're accountable to each other, so that would be
Yeah.
great. Okay,
I would say working close in the viticulture wine industry. In fact, there's a lot of family owned and third generation, and it's a unique environment. It's a unique environment. I've worked for Fortune 5s that have been non-family owned, and I've worked for Fortune 5s that are family owned, and it's very different in certain parts, but there's also a sense of pride, especially within the agricultural community as a whole. There is a sense of pride within there, and you see that in the families that have gone generation after generation in the ag industry. It's very interesting. It's like you read the management textbooks and then you see those, and it's kind of like, this is different, and it's a different culture. Either people love working for families, or they're like, give me the corporate America. It's a very interesting dynamic. But I'm going to say to a sense of pride, if I look at performance within the contracts, past performance, and I always look at past performance, it's one of my things. You've had success of 100% multiple times. The last one fell slightly short to 74%. Can you give us a bit of background of what happened and what are we looking at doing differently this time to go back to our past performance of being more like in that 100% or that 90, we like the high performance? It's.
Yeah, no, we definitely want to meet the 100% level for the contract. I will say we did have a staff change in our HR department, so we had to onboard 2 new personnel to the department. So just that cross training and that time that it took to train somebody up, that kind of took a backseat to what we were doing. We now have, as I mentioned, the 5 people in our department. Everyone is very well versed with ETP. I will tell you that even though we didn't have an ETP contract, everybody knows how to fill out the ETP roster. So we are still using those rosters because we didn't want anyone to discontinue that process. So that they, you know, our supervisors at the field level, they're used to that process and used to the form itself. So we do believe that, you know, and anticipate we will be able to meet the 100% level again.
Any other questions? Any questions? All right, so if we don't have any more questions, do we have any motion for resolution of the matter?
Well, I'll make a motion.
Please go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve this contract
Mhm.
for uniforms with at least one special condition. So, during the contract, if there is any substantiated claim that occurs, that we revisit this application and make a determination whether we continue it or stop it.
Does council have a question? I know I do.
So sorry, I think I'm right.
Yeah, so, I mean, well, a comment before a question, which is, that, you know, I guess we see, this process in terms of applicants go forward, this is a bit unusual. So I guess if the panel would indulge the question, what's the concern that's driving that? I guess the comment is that if that's referring to a substantiated claim, is that referring to like an actual merits
I
determination?
should have been more clear about wage and hour claim.
Okay, so is that referring to a substantiated wage and hour violation?
Yes.
Okay, so an actual merits determination. I mean, I guess the comment would be number one, that it's an unusual requirement. I mean, California is a highly litigious environment. It's really no matter what best practices any particular employer adopts in California. I'm afraid it's just a part of the landscape of doing business here in California that lawsuits are filed. You know, I think that also it's also just a part of the California landscape that no matter how compliant your systems are, no matter how many checks, no matter how many fail safes, it's any employer, even if they're at the gold star level, can have a scenario where they have a one-off where one employee misses a meal period and they go to the DLSE, which has, you know, far fewer review processes, and you can end up with a merits determination. And I would just hate to see this ETP contract tied to a condition like that, just knowing the realities of the California litigation landscape. It's a really onerous requirement that frankly, I'm not sure any ag business could really meet. I mean, it would surprise me to see that like any ag business, like for example, over a 2-year span has like never had a DLSE, like a super minor DLSE administrative claim filed over like, oh, I didn't get a meal period.
You all look at me, so my
Why don't you
thoughts are,
question
this.
or- Yeah.
Before you proceed, let me just, because I was listening to it, and my question was substantiated as well. And I do hear merit determination, so we're not talking about mere filing a complaint, we're talking about a merit determination that an adjudication has taken place. And to me, I think all of those arguments just disappear, because as soon as somebody says, like, I understand filing complaints, but if it's been adjudicated, then I see that. My concern, though, is probably a little bit more of, what does revisit mean?
Mhm.
Because we're already in a contract. So I disagree that, that this is like unheard of. It actually has happened at times. I've been at EPP for 7 years, and there are sometimes unique issues that come up, and the panel has required certain terms and conditions on contracts, or had that come back with your reports, provide supplemental information, which is not, you know, our bread and butter, or cookie cutter type way of doing things. I guess probably my more concern was what happens to revisit. Let's say we go down this path and we enter into the contract, and I put in language, and we all agree to it, and then something takes place, not just a complaint, but an actual adjudication. When we come back, well, how do I undo that contract? I guess we have termination provision, and any party can avail themselves of the termination clause in our contract. But I could do that even on a complaint, so I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page talking these issues through. I love to hear Kamani's input on stuff like this.
I think Michael has outlined some of the questions or concerns in terms of having that type of condition. You know, how would we? I don't know if we use the right word, enforce it, but I know we have had conditions where we've required applicants to come back and give a report of, you know, a certain level of performance, more measurement. This might be a little bit different.
As I'm hearing it too, because I mean, and thank you, because I mean, maybe it would be more of a reporting type along the lines of a studio art situation. And I say that because we had that recently. And the only reason I bring that up is because I think we will have difficulties regarding what does adjudication look, what does merit looks like, what do we do with the contract at that time? And by the way, again, our contract has language in there that says that they're to be in compliance with California law and federal law. So if they're not in violation of law, I'll terminate them. I mean, we also have termination for convenience, we have termination for cause. So we already have tools in the toolbox in the contract already.
Man, I'm throwing it out there because I'm listening and I'm thinking and I'm
Yeah,
thinking
going back to
things.
what he was saying, that maybe there's more of a reporting, that maybe this one has more shepherding like we have had with other examples.
Which is pretty scary. Because there's a piece around, Mike said, is around when will it happen? Because some of these don't come in until 2, 3, 4 years later. The contract's been finished. Would we then have to backdate? 1321, you know, throwing it out there, that assembly bill that was passed. I wonder if 1321 future applications, I think it's the awareness that future applications will have 1321 implications that can fall on wages, can pull on lawsuits into prevention of funding or reduction of funding. We're still working through that. But I'm wondering, Mike, too, where I know where you're going, and I can see where your mind's thinking of, like, if there is an issue again, it could affect funding. I think 1321 will take care of that in the future, because really, if had a lawsuit can come up 5 years later. It's not usually immediate. It takes time, and it's usually because we're changing law and other things. But I just wonder if 1321 would cover this going forward, because if something happens, 1321 comes in, future contract, it's gonna go potentially court there once we know the true guidelines of 1321. So for me, I feel a bit more like I would remove that limitation, because 1321 should catch that in future contracts. But that's just my, and
That
Ronnie,
is-
Michael, correct me if my 1321 understanding is
That's-
correct.
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay.
It would definitely cover snapshots in time for future contract applications. Whether there were labor or other enforcement violations would have to be attested to. So that's correct.
Okay,
I'm okay with that.
okay.
Would you feel comfortable with doing a report in 6 months or?
Maybe we, I'm thinking about the 75% invoicing stage. Maybe there's a report at that prior to the invoice.
And what would so I'm gonna pull studio arts because close to that, I know why we have that. We have that because there's been auditing issues, there's been past performance that was not stellar, is what I'm gonna say, in audits, in performance. I look at Vegan and I'm like, they have been good performers. Last time we were just slightly shy of that 75. I don't know if performance would be the right thing. Personally, I'm like 1321, I think is gonna catch it in the future. I think I don't know what we'd report on. I don't want to be asking them to come and report back. Studio arts, we're very clear. We want to know how you're doing, how's your enrollment. They've had different wavering amounts over the years and differences with their audits and all sorts of messy pieces that staff have had to work through as well. So we're really bringing it to panel to be like, you are staying on top of your enrollments. Do you feel that the industry is going to bring you in the people because they've had performance issues, they've had audit issues? There's a very clear guideline as to what we're asking there. I don't know what we'd be asking Vino Farms here. You guys can tell me because I'm not the voice of all. Of what you would want to see if we were asking to come back.
And as you're digesting, that was my bringing it up, wasn't necessarily the substance of the, let's say, studio arts, but more of that framework or that
Yeah,
vehicle
like, what
that
are we
we use to
looking for?
address those
Yeah.
issues in that training contract. So,
May I interject, Madam Chair?
Of course you can.
We already have prior performance and active performance on the panel proposal. So to kind of revisit what you mentioned earlier about SB 1321, those aspects would be memorialized in a future panel proposal as to what past performance would look like if this moved forward. The other piece that I'd like to raise is that we do have staff who can let you know where they are in terms of performance. I don't know if it necessarily becomes a follow-up conversation, but it can be one of those things where we internally monitor.
Okay, just for the record, the reason I was even thinking of that was, I don't want to come back here again.
We are on the record.
Time that we had to put into this because of or potentially some actions that were not appropriate. So, yeah, that's why I was trying to put some teeth into it. Now, I'm okay if we remove all of that and redo the motion to approve this without conditions.
So what I'm hearing, just because I want to make sure I'm clear, because you know I'm that guy, right?
Yep.
What I'm hearing is Member Hill making a motion to approve the Vino Farms application as it was brought forward in April of 2024, as is, no changes, no amendments to it. Effective date would be commensurate with this hearing today, correct? Because this would be our
Yes.
approval.
Exactly.
So I'm hearing a motion to approve it as I just articulated. Is there a second to that?
I will say.
So I have first and I have a second, which means I now need to move it over to public comment. So I'm just asking if there are any members of the public who wish to comment on matters listed on today's agenda. Do we have anyone? I know not in the room, public here, but online?
No public comments
No
online.
public comment online. Okay. Then we are going to move to vote. Can I get a roll call vote? Thank you.
Jennifer Fothergill. Aye. Rebecca Bettencourt.
Aye.
Michael Hill.
So we are all in favour, so therefore the motion is adopted. You are funded with the stipulations that Niagara Game over the funding of the April contract or beginning today. So if there isn't anything further,
Before you do,
yeah,
any questions? Because I heard our panel members say they do not want to come back. Were there any questions?
No,
I just didn't yield to give you an opportunity.
No, we thank the panel on the subcommittee for their consideration of this and for the motion on granting the contract. Thank you.
thank
Yes,
you.
thank you.
Go
Can I
ahead.
ask
Yes.
a question? Are there still funds in the ag?
This is a long group.
There are some
Okay.
funds.
Yes, there are.
More than enough to cover what.
Got it. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
That approved zero.
We are made sure, yeah, we are made sure. So
Funds are still there.
yeah, the funds are still there. So if we don't have anything further, I am, well, I don't need to do that. I've been told I'm allowed to say it concludes the hearing and the record is now closed. And so pursuant to ETP regulations 22 CCR section 4450B2C, a written rule of these proceedings will be issued. We are adjourned. Thank you. everyone.
Thank you.